Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in for another webinar with Zomentum. Today, we're going to be talking about how to make cold calling work for your MSP business, especially as we look at going into 2024, a new year. How can we accelerate the sales motion, especially when it comes to outbound cold calling? And with that in mind, we have with us Derek Marin, who is the founder and president at Simple Selling. He's been working with MSPs, essentially accelerating their outbound sales motion for some time now. And he's essentially going to take us through how you can accelerate your outbound motion with cold calling. What are the tips and tricks? What goes into thinking about that whole process, and how you can make it more and more efficient, right? So I'm going to leave you with Derek in his very capable hands. Derek, over to you.
Great, thanks, Rahul. Hey, folks. Good morning or good evening. I hope you're all doing well, and I really appreciate you guys taking some time out of your busy days to join us today. As Rahul said, my name is Derek. My company is Simple Selling. We implement outbound business development for MSPs and exclusively for MSPs. Been doing it since 2019. And yeah, it's primarily for those MSPs that really don't want to be doing cold calling, that have bigger fish to fry, bigger problems to take care of for their clients. And so today I'm hoping to bring some value and just share a little bit from our experience in the trenches and doing the outbound, and talk a little bit about at least what we see going into the upcoming year, what needs to happen to keep getting consistent and good results. I would love for this to be interactive. Right now I'm just seeing my own slides. So I hope that you guys can, add comments, questions in the chat, so that we can make this a little bit more engaging. Fun fact. So that's a picture of me with the family, our three boys. They're all under the age of 7 right now, and so it's kind of a crazy time. I'm in the Boston area as well, so if any of you guys are on the East Coast, Northeast, definitely let me know and grab a coffee or lunch. So I would love to know from the group, who is here, in terms of your roles and responsibilities within your MSP, just to get a sense of the audience with us today. I don't know if Rahul, you're able to run the question there.
Absolutely. I think I've launched the poll, so people should be able to access that and give us a answer.
Yeah, let's give it a few seconds here. Can everyone see the results of the poll, Rahul, or will they only see the question?
I don't think, not at the moment. Once I finish the poll, I should be able to share that with the
group. It'll update. Okay, cool.
I think, yeah, we've got a few MSP, like half of them are MSP presidents, a few marketing managers, people from business development, and others. I'm very curious about what the others category is, but I'm just gonna end the poll now. Give you all the last 10 seconds. If you haven't yet answered those questions, go for it.
Okay. Yeah. Small SP5 customers for founder. Got it. Thank you, Adam. Yeah, so it sounds like we have a little bit of everything. Sometimes I've done this webinar or something similar. Oh, there we go. There are the stats. 43%. Got it. Well, thank you. So it looks like we have like a broad range of backgrounds here. So moving on. So I'm just going to dive right in, guys. So at a very high level, just starting with like outbound in general, this is an infographic I pulled from, I believe it was a company called Haya. And they're just showing some high level numbers on cold calling. On the left, it shows around the best time to call between 4 to 5 p.m. For booking appointments. And in the middle, it's talking about how many attempts, cold call attempts per prospect, it kind of takes to reach a prospect on average. On the right, how many cold calls should I actually make? 60 calls per day, according to them. And it should last about 4 minutes and 50 seconds. So, there's all kinds of reports in the state of cold calling and the state of outbound that you can find. And most of the questions and answers will be similar to what you find here. In the case of like MSP specific, right? Because that's what we're here for. I have a couple of stats that I found from some of my competitors, even so other vendors like us. Interesting to see. I'll just go a couple points. It says they have 300-to-1 is the ratio of dials to appointments, which translate to about 1 sales appointment per 20 to 25 hours of calling. Their second point here, most MSP cold calling programs generate around 4 appointments per 80 hours of calling time. So, per month, 4 appointments per month. And most programs will not generate an appointment in the first few months. So when I read these, I was, more or less nodding my head in agreement. Our data, at least with our group of MSPs, and we're close to the 10 client mark, to give you a sense of how we're not a big company, working with that many MSPs. We have very similar figures. Something that I thought was relevant is what is said here by TSIA. So they said the average deal time for managed services is longer than the transactional product-led engagement. So it's not uncommon for large managed services deals to take a year or longer to design, negotiate, and close. Therefore, salespeople need to have patience. And that is very true when it comes to the cold calling side as well. It's very rare that we interrupt someone when they're very upset with or very much looking to make a switch to their IT managed services relationship. And so that long sales cycle is something that we see very common. In our particular case of clients, MSPs, like the first point here is our average sales cycle that we're seeing is just over 8 months. And in our case, because we use like 1 CRM per MSP, and you're using multiple channels to do our outbound. So that's dialing, email, and LinkedIn. We're seeing it takes around 12 dials, 4 emails, and a LinkedIn touch to connect to a decision maker or like a key influencer many times. So it's a lot of volume through different channels is what we're seeing, is what it kind of takes. And we're also seeing that our typical client is closing between 2 to 3 new agreements, managed services agreements during the first year. And that's some are more, and where it really starts to really start increasing at a higher volume is definitely in the second year, as those as that longer sales cycle kind of like comes closes the loop on that. So that's just a very high level of some of the data. Obviously, we have a lot more in all of our statistics and that we track, but I just kind of wanted to level set a little bit and share a little at the high level. And so today, I think we're talking a little bit about cold calling specifically, not outbound as a whole. But what I wanted to first bring up is a framework that many of you guys are experts in, the NIST framework. And the reason I'm bringing it up here is because it is, of course, a way to think about cybersecurity, a way to approach a company organization security posture, and having all the different pieces sort of looked at and basically figured out, right, from identifying, protecting, detecting, responding, and recover. And you need, in the ideal world, right, answers and this whole framework, basically taken care of to be as secure as possible. Similarly, right, or actually taking a step back from that, why do we have frameworks or security frameworks? At the end of the day, it's an exercise in risk mitigation, right? We're looking at ways to reduce the risk of a breach or reduce the risk of detrimental, downtime, reduce the risk of reputation damage, et cetera, violations if it's in the case of government and compliance, right? But it's nothing is perfect, right? We never go into an MSP, or no cybersecurity consultant is ever going to say, we guarantee, right, that you're never going to be breached, right? This is all an exercise of risk mitigation. Similarly, when it comes to MSP, or really any cold calling or outbound play or effort or investment, right? It's also an exercise in many ways in how can we minimize the risk of this program being a total dud, a total failure, right? And what I've pulled up here is a very simple framework that we've developed that is not rocket science by any means, but it's just kind of looking at the big components of kind of what it takes to have a successful program in cold calling. So today we're mainly going to look at this one here, the execution of the cold call, more tactical. But I did, before jumping into this, I did just want to briefly touch on a few of the pieces that come before executing the cold call. So sales training. Sales training is absolutely pivotal for getting cold calling to work, right? For us to get the results that we want. When I ask most MSPs during our discovery, what is your close won rate in your sales process? Actually, it'd be interesting to hear in the group what would you say your close win rate typically is? I would love to see folks, if you can, if you're one of the MSP owners or presidents, or if you're an account exec, particularly if you're an MSP owner, what is your closed won rate? If you can add it to the chat pane, I'd love to see what folks are putting in there. As you guys are typing that in, what I've found a lot of the time is that folks say 80% or above 50%. I always get that answer. Why is that the case? Why might that be the case? Or Raul, feel free to jump into. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but why are so many MSPs putting such high close won rates on average? Definitely add to the chat pane if you have some thoughts. And Raul, if you're seeing any answers, I would love to hear what folks are saying. But in my experience anyway, it's because they're mainly coming from a word of mouth or a referral-based growth scenario. And when you're in that type of growth environment, or where you're getting leads that are sent over to you, you're already trusted and liked because it's a referral, right, from either an existing client or someone who knows you and trusts you. And it's hot because they're reaching out to you because they're in extreme pain, or they're trying to change a situation. And so most MSPs have that expectation that when you come to cold calling and sales, that it's going to be the exact same process, when it really couldn't be further from the truth. A good close won rate for cold calling, in our experience anyway, and not just ours, I've met many times with my competitors, and what they've seen also is somewhere between 10 to 15% of a close run rate. For every appointment that you get, that's the percentage that will close. And I think what is really important is that it's called sales training, right? So it has to be practiced. It can't just be, it doesn't matter if it's Gap sales training, Medic, Sandler, or whatever it is. It has to be something that is put into practice, literally practiced. Otherwise, we're not going to get, even those conversion rates that I shared a moment ago. What I have on my screen is that discovery is not for you, it's for the prospect, right? Because the prospect is actually not a prospect. It's a prospect for you, but in the majority of cases, they already have some kind of IT provider. They actually are a client of one of your competitors. And so they already have, for the most part, a decent IT provider in most cases that is doing the help desk, the computer support, if you will, reasonably well in many cases. And so this is what I put up here is just a screenshot of some of the questions that a former MSP client of mine, former I say because they're not currently still working with us, of some of the questions that he used to use in his that he said that he would use in his meetings with first meetings. And one of them here is, especially looking at the bottom two, how important is IT to your business operations, or how critical is computer network security to your business? This should naturally come up in the conversation. So, if we go into a meeting with those types of questions, or how many computer employees do you have, and these types of questions, they very quickly we're going to sound like who? We're going to sound just like the MSP or the provider that they have, right? There's very little differentiation. There's very little, I guess we would say, demonstration of the knowledge that you have about that person's business going in. If we're asking these types of questions, it's very one directional. So that's just something to keep in mind, that sales training is super duper important. I would not recommend, if you're going to get into cold calling, you go with, you invest a ton in this unless you're prepared to either have an account executive, get sales training, or if you're the owner wearing multiple hats, that you're going to go through sales training yourself. Any thoughts or questions on this, Raul? Because I can't really see the chat pane, but definitely,
I think to your previous point, right? I think the majority of people are echoing the same thoughts around conversion rates are high because they're either referral customers or customers that they've already known, and are sort of coming in via relationships, but not pure outbound customers, right? I think John called out that they have a 20% conversion rate, but obviously for referrals that will be much higher, which is what we're seeing across the board in majority of the responses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can tell a quick story even this week. So it's got a frustration, right? Because I'm the vendor, right? And we're providing appointments for MSP. And this is an MSP that, my BDR, the business development rep doing the cold calling, he noticed that one of the opportunities that we had generated through cold calling, that there wasn't a follow-up for that prospect. And we were looking at the dates of the previous note, the most recent note. It was back in June. Earlier in June, it was left by the MSP president saying, "Oh, we had a great call. They were gonna schedule the CSRA, the cybersecurity risk assessment." That was the MSP president's note in the CRM in June, and then there's no activity after that. So we just circled back. He just happened to be checking it, and then we asked, how did this go, or what happened? Because there was no update, and then we got a reply from the MSP saying, "Oh, I'm going to give him another call." So either he did not follow through in the first place, or if he did, he's doing it outside the CRM, which is not a good practice, right? Because it needs to be documented. So this is the kind of thing that it's really important, that needs to get things moving in the right direction. Next thing is strategy. Cold calling, I think one of the biggest confusions is, and maybe I'm preaching to the choir here, but I've found that many MSPs going in the cold calling is actually kind of sometimes like an aha realization, is that cold calling is not a strategy. It's just it's a tactic. It's a way to get the meeting. It's a way to get the at bat, right, with a potential client, right? And so what that means is, like, you can't hire a BDR or work with a vendor if you don't have a pre-existing, have a strategy in place for how we're going to actually get these prospects to convert over to switch, right? Because we're talking about switching in the majority. We're getting a client to switch to us, right? And so here's just one of the slides that we have during our onboarding with our new MSPs. A strategy statement. There's more to it, but this is like a good starting point. Very simple. Like top left, status quo MSP. Here's how the other MSPs do things, right? It's a narrative, right? And it has to go in this order, right? Here's how other MSPs do certain things. Why is this bad? Why does this suck? What is the reason this needs to change? 2, 3, our belief, right? What we think that's different from everyone else, our breakthrough insight or belief, right? And finally, our solution, what we're going to do or already doing that's resulting from our insight that's going to fix this problem and deliver massive value. So you got to think, what are the things that we as an MSP do better than our competition that's in our area, and we have to focus on that, and that's going to be ultimately key to getting the kind of results that we want. We can't just go in and just expect clients to just open their checkbook and just say, oh, managed IT services, wow, why hadn't I thought of that? Or cybersecurity, wow, that's table stakes now. So we have to be more prepared to really understand what makes us different. And it's the MSP's job, or really the MSP's job, to have this clear before you bring on a vendor or before you hire a BDR in-house. Otherwise, you're setting yourself and the person up for failure big time. And I've learned this lesson the hard way. And I've only had this company a few years, and I worked with MSPs that were willing to work with me at the very beginning just because they wanted to invest in outbound. And I made that mistake of just not pushing on this topic enough. We're just going to get meetings and it's going to happen. And it doesn't work out very well. So apologize, I'm spending so much time on these two things, but I think that they're so critical to actually getting the results that you want from outbound. Okay, so moving on to the execution here. And I know I'm talking a ton. Rahul, any thoughts from your end, or questions or comments from the folks? I'm just going to get a sip of water about the strategy. I mean, there's more to it. I probably should do a separate webinar on this, but
I'm just trying to. I think Brian was trying to ask a question, but I think there's a comment. Brian, do you want to elaborate on that? They had to let a BDR go. What was the reason, or what did you discover by letting them go?
Should I move on here, Rahul, or are we waiting for an answer?
No, I think we can move on, and
okay. Sounds good. That's why webinars are tricky. I'm like, I can't tell if someone is saying something or all right. So in the execution here of the cold call and the outbound, right? So we have a bunch of sections here. I'm just going to focus, right, for the sake of time and scope of a webinar, on connecting techniques and poking. There's these other parts that, of course, actually, I think I touch on pitching a little bit and some of the farming stuff. But yeah, so guys, definitely do engage, comment, question for this. So this is a snapshot of the Bridge Group's study on the state of sales development. And I think it was from 2022. And they're talking in this chart about quality conversations per day. So a useful metric is the number of QCs per rep per day. We define QC as a connect or a response where at least one piece of qualifying or disqualifying information is learned. We find an average of 4.4 QCs per rep per day. That's a big fall since 2014, or nearly 10% annual decline. Yeah, so this is becoming increasingly difficult, but it can be managed and it can be improved. So this is so important, obviously, because if we're doing cold calling, we need to be talking to the right people, basically. And you guys can imagine, what we're coming up against is many times folks either IVRs or like the machines, right? Or some kind of person who, a receptionist, or what we call them, a gatekeeper. It might sound silly, but it's a person answering the phone. So I would love to hear some thoughts either in the chat of ways to improve the connect rate. What is a good connect rate? What is a good? So they said 4.4. That's basically like we're aiming between we aim for 4 to 6 quality conversations per day. So that comes out to somewhere around like 8-9% of the dials, like of your dial volume. And we have to be able to track that. So anyway, speaking of which, what are some ways that we can improve connecting? I want you guys to engage here with a little bit, so it's not just one way. What's been working for you guys, especially if you're an account exec that's done some cold calling, or if there's a BDR in the webinar? What are some things that you've been doing for improving connect rates? And I'm very comfortable being idling because I'm used to it with working with my team. My BDRs are not engaging with me in my huddle in the very first thing in the morning, or they're not answering. I'll just wait. That awkward silence.
Yeah, I think we've got a couple of responses coming in. Says we should call their cell phones directly. Increase number of dials. Those are the two that we've got so far. Any other thoughts from anybody else?
Yeah, that's good. I know we don't have yeah, that's great. Thank you for whoever was, adding their 2 cents. I would I love the cell phones. I know it could bother some folks. But at the end of the day, we're interrupting people. It's a cold call, folks. So we definitely would encourage the use of cell phones. We just have to be respectful of the time of day that we're calling and how we introduce ourselves and being efficient. All those like obvious things that at a bare minimum we should do when we're cold calling someone. They're only elevated that much more for a cell phone. And we try not to start with the cell phone. We try because we have access to their company, their direct lines, and if we're not getting success there first, we have the cell phone kind of as like a secondary. But I'm sure that there are vendors, like folks who've seen success just doing cell phone 100% of the time. We're kind of at that stage where we don't do it first, but we kind of have it like halfway through our sequence where we're like, okay, time to hit up the cell phone.
And before you jump onto the training, Derek, I think we have a question. Is having BDRs remotely working a good idea?
Oh, that's a great question. So I am extremely biased, but I've only had the experience of working with a dispersed team. I don't have a call center. Yeah, I don't have a physical call center. My whole team is remote, and it's working. So it can be done. It can be done. It's definitely different than in person and all that, but that's a whole other conversation. Yeah. All right, so here's just a couple of very simple things for improving connect rate. Hey, John Smith, please. So this sound in downward inflection, not, hey, John Smith, please, right? The last one I did with the going up, it sounds very much like, a salesperson, In other words, you're not sure, it's almost like you're begging. Whereas, hi, John Smith, please, or a little bit more downward, you sound a little bit more like you may be a bit older, like you may be more experienced, not the person that many folks think of as a cold caller, right? And sounds like, you might know John, right? Hi, John, please. If there's multiple Johns, you may have to add the last name. You don't need to say, hi, this is Derek with IT, IT, ABC IT company. May I speak to John, please? Because if we put all of that stuff up front, and especially if your name has IT or reveals itself as an IT company, guess what? What's the gatekeeper going to do? We have IT. Click, right? Right. So then you're in like you're not in a good spot. So we like to start very simple, go right for the decision maker's name. Another one is being very polite, and our BDRs have different styles, right? Hey Mary, we have the name of the gatekeeper at this point. This might be the second call you're making to this prospect, or third call. In the previous two calls, since there was call recording, or when you took good notes, you'll know that the gatekeeper's name is Mary. So you might be able to mention, hey Mary, good morning, how are you? Good, can you connect me with John, please, right? Connect me with John, please, right? So, little things like this may sound ridiculous to some of you guys, like, wow, it's coming down to, this is what it, are these tricks? These are not really tricks. It's a process. And when you've done it thousands and thousands of times, you start to see what works and what doesn't. So, and every little word and intonation can make a huge difference. So this is just a couple of really small but simple things. Another thing that really helps is when an MSP is doing events or webinars or luncheons or something like that. If you're doing that, then when the gatekeeper asks, what is this in regards to? Yeah, we're calling to answer some questions about an event that she's been invited to, right? So if you've also been inviting the prospects to your event through your sequences, you can kind of start with, mentioning the event. That puts the gatekeeper in a, we want the gatekeeper to kind of be perplexed, or to kind of feel like, this is not really a sales call, right? Because if it's purely a sales call, they're instructed to stop those from going through. But if it's an event, we've seen much better connect rates when it's related to some kind of an event, right? Because it can be passed along. You just got to make sure that you're congruent. Like, so if you're going to use this tactic, you actually have to have a real event, and you have to start with that. But that gets the conversation going. The other concept for improving connect rates is, many times we have the gatekeeper say, oh, he's not available. So you want to, what the gatekeeper is going to try to do many times is, as soon as he or she says he's not available, is, what is this in regards to? Or what are you calling about? Or, where are you from, right? Because he or she is trying to get to the bottom of it. But we try many times to not allow the gatekeeper to get that question even out. So he's not available right away. Oh, no problem. Do you think I should try him again later today? Or what do you suggest? Or something, so that you're controlling, to the best of your ability, the very quick conversation with the gatekeeper. So rather than her getting out that that question of like, are you a salesperson, is you get the question out before she does, right? And very, very often, if you're prepared, you're able to kind of, at the very least, get more information about when to try the person back later, and also you don't get kind of blocked. So these are some very simple things that we can do to try to improve the connect rate. Another one is emailed. We'll call you around noon. Yeah, so you could. Yeah, this one is a little bit different, where you're going to mention it. You're going to call the decision maker in the email, and then when you do connect, when you do speak with the gatekeeper, and she asks, what is this call in regards to? Yeah, we were supposed to connect around noontime. So this one's a little bit on the edge or gray area of being like, you can say, a little sketchy, but we have to walk that fine line. If we're going to get results, we have to push that boundary a little bit. So even though you didn't have a scheduled call at noon, you did say in the email that you were going to call this person around that time. And I would recommend, we don't use this a lot, but it's still a tactic that some of our BDRs try, and they love. A few of them hate it and don't use it. I think my favorite overall is to think of a connect rate not just in terms of, am I going to connect on the phone, or am I going to get a reply to my emails? Okay, because we're doing multiple channels. So anytime you get the opportunity to leave, a voicemail, directly for the person, take it. Look for it, because there's nothing like it doesn't happen often enough from your competitors. And so it makes you stand out. It allows you to put a voice to it, and allows you to kind of point the prospect towards your email. So what would be a good voicemail? Love to hear examples of how you guys leave voicemails, if any, for any of you who are doing the cold calling. So I guess we'll see, Raul, if anyone dares to, or not dares to, but is kind enough to share what they like to put in. Raul, anyone typing, or nothing yet?
Yes, we've got one one coming from Mark. It says you won, call us back immediately. So
What's that?
you won, call us back immediately.
You won? uh, I wish we could do that. Yeah. Yeah. What we're seeing is that what we used to do is we would say, "Hey, this is Derek with ABC MSP," or something like that, and we weren't really seeing that voicemails were helping. and we assume, we don't know for sure, but that was because we were just putting the IT and the MSP up front. And as soon as we believe that they were just kind of deleting or not really paying attention to the voicemail. Once we started shifting it to, hey, this is Derek. I sent you an email with subject line, doesn't matter, the subject line ABC. Please have a look when you get a chance. Again, this is Derek with company name. When we did it that way, we saw our email open rates go up substantially. So now we're getting like 30-40% open rates on cold. Remember, these are all cold emails, right? It's not like it's a warm list, it's a cold lead. You got a bump in email open rates, and it helps with subsequent calls to get a connect, or at least a reply via email. Sometimes the replies on email are no, thank you. But you know what? A no is better than no answer, right? We don't want our precious BDR, our precious time dialing folks who don't want to hear from us. So a no on an email or is greatly appreciated, right? To move on to the next prospect. So definitely leave voicemails, and try not to put a lot of emphasis on your name or the name of your company at the beginning of your message. Put the subject line of the email that you're sending to point the prospect towards your email, because in your email, you guys can have 150, 200 words. You can get a lot more information to them, as opposed to a voicemail that's like 2 minutes long. No one wants to listen to a 2-minute voicemail. So just some thoughts on connecting. Raul, any thoughts from you or in your experience?
No, I think what you're saying is spot on, right? I think it's about thinking or putting yourself in your prospect's shoes and thinking about how can you be differentiated from the 10 other voicemails that somebody else has left, right? Because I'm very sure 9 others have also called out their company name, where they're calling from, and what this call is about. And only a handful are saying that, hey, I've sent you this email, go check it out, right? And like you said, you've already invested the time and effort in drafting out that message for a particular prospect. So why not have them check that out rather than spell it out in 30 seconds where it's not going to have the same impact, right? So absolutely, I think that's a very good call out.
Cool. Next, so the other thing that is, super important, right, is the poke, or what is a poke, in this context. So, I'm a big follower of Josh Braun. If you guys haven't heard of him, you should look him up he posts a lot on LinkedIn. And for me, he's been like that mentor, in our space, that I've followed virtually. So anyway, he says, ditch the pitch. Whenever prospects feel sales pressure, they enter the zone of resistance. Instead, illuminate problems prospects might not be aware of and let them make up their own mind. In other words, poke the bear. So, quick story is, when I started doing this, obviously I didn't have employees. I didn't start with, I started alone, and I started you know, at first we started doing like content marketing, digital marketing for MSPs, and that did not work. And then I started picking up the phone and dialing, and I was thinking, oh, well, you know, because I didn't have a cold calling background. But so I thought, oh, I should just learn everything I can about, you know, managed services and the solutions and just focus on that in my call. So you know, I digested as much as I could about everything, cloud migrations, you know, NIST, QBRs or SBRs, you know, quarterly business reviews, strategic business reviews, and like all that's, you know, a lot of like technical stuff. I try to just get the high level of all these things. And I of course, after I spent all this time thinking I knew so much about your services or MSP services, I brought that into my call. And what do you guys think happened? And when I gave these tech talks on cold calls, I think you guys know it didn't go well, but you know, not that everyone hung up the phone, but like, I have an IT guy. We're already migrated. My MSP does QBRs, you know, so conversations dried up quick, and it was very difficult to set meetings, and so it wasn't working. So the poke the bear is flipping it, right? Not pitching, but asking good questions that gets the conversation going and gets them to think about, get the prospect to think a little bit. What are some good examples of poke the bear questions in the context of a cold call for MSPs? Love to hear your guys' thoughts, or what's working for you guys, or what you think you would try. Raul, I'll wait another few seconds here.
Yeah,
be brave, guys. Be brave. Whatever you put down, maybe you've gotten good results, or maybe you try something, and we probably tried it and crashed and burned with that one. So no shame here. We're not here to publicly shame poke the bear questions or potential questions. Anyone typing in, Raul?
Yep, I think there's. Are you having Wi-Fi again? Are you having Wi-Fi problems?
You're having Wi-Fi. Yeah. I'll give one example here. So this would be any others, Raul? Came through?
No. Nobody's being brave on this.
Okay. That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, you guys might be eating something while you're watching. Like, Derek's making me work in the webinar. Sorry. Sometimes, so this is a simple one for, like, let's say you were calling a mid-size SMB and you're going for, you know, co-managed in this scenario, right? So maybe you're talking to that one IT manager at this company. So sometimes, you know, internal IT are so overrun with daily requirements that there's almost no time for valuable long-range projects. Just wondering, how is the workload there these days, right? So the idea here being, you know, we're prefacing, right, that there might be a lot of work, right, that they're working on, you know, help desk, and who knows, or, you know, the fires that they can't work on other more high impact stuff that they'd like to work on. So this is a very simple, you know, reframing, right, of things. If you do some research on that prospect before you even pick up the phone, you notice on LinkedIn that they're hiring like crazy, or they have a lot of job openings. You know, you got to kind of anticipate, say, or do you expect the workload to increase? I noticed that you guys are hiring a lot. You expect workload to increase in the next few months. So it may not just be about what's happened in the present, but also what's happening in the near future, right? So think questions like these. Now, this is one of many types, and it depends on your differentiation and what your strategy is and all of that stuff, but a very simple way to think about poking. So again, when you're doing your intro, say you get past the gatekeeper, and you know you're speaking to the decision maker, a C-level, or it could be an IT manager or whatever it is. You know, you want to say hello. You know, in our experience, because you can ask a lot of different folks, you can, you know, YouTube it to death. The best intro. There's lots of different intros. Basically, it doesn't matter. You'll hear all different kinds. What I found the most important thing is to just be confident and to be consistent. Hi, John. This is Chester with Simple Selling. How have you been? How have you been is one that a lot of folks talk about, because when how have you been sounds almost like you might have connected with them in the past. How have you been? It keeps in some cases, prospects hearing that might be wondering, have I spoken to this guy before? How have you been? So at least that's the theory behind how have you been, why it works well. But it could backfire. But over time, consistently, with confidence, it can work well. Good. How are you? Right? You're gonna get, and you get to the next part. Right? Poke the bear. So again, thought-provoking question. Try to make it open-ended so they can't just answer with a yes or no. Right? And shut up and listen. Shut the front door after you ask it, and just let silence do its thing. Right? The prospect will fill it. Will fill the gap. So this is just an example in my context as simple selling, right? Not for an MSP, just an example. Notice you had an MSP in Boston. In conversations with MSPs, a common situation I hear is that word of mouth is good, but very inconsistent. Just wondering, how are you guys handling lead gen over there, right? Shut the front door, let that person speak, let them give an answer, get the conversation kind of going on that. Pattern interrupting follow-up question, right? You probably heard of poking the bear, right? So if an MSP had replied to me, they might give any kind of reply, things are good, or I'm getting lots of leads, or I'm getting lots of referrals, but they're actually, I'm not getting that many referrals, but I get them and they're great. I wish I had more of them, right? I could follow up with, you've probably heard of poking the bear, right? What is that? Right? That keeps the conversation going, piques a little bit of curiosity. Right? So the idea is to get the conversation going, try to find out if there's an opportunity for there to be a meeting. If you're talking to, one of the BDRs that we're working with that is on our team now is asking a question similar to, because we always get that objection. We have an IT guy or we have an MSP. Right. So, they'll throw that out. The prospect will throw that out sometimes immediately, but definitely early in the first half of the call. So a question could also be, well, is that, do you have one provider handling both your IT needs and cybersecurity for you? Yes, they do everything. Okay, great. That's wonderful. Well, just wondering, because sometimes when one vendor is doing both IT services and cybersecurity, sometimes there's no one overseeing their security decisions. There's no oversight there. So just wondering, how do you make sure that they're not, leaving any gaps potentially in your network, right? So again, if the question puts them in a position where their answer is going to be, good question, or I hadn't thought of that, that's a good poke the bear question. Objection handling, of course. You'll have the more common ones. We found there's I think it really boils down to there's 4 or 5 common ones that we hear on behalf of our MSPs. You just got to practice them. And it's not, more than anything, it's not a real objection. Like, we have an IT, we have an MSP. That's not an objection. That's just stating a fact. Yeah, I know that you have an MSP, right? So, not that you would say that as a reply, but what I'm saying is, we know these are not real objections. In other words, they're just like a response, right? It's just psychological. Like they want to get off the phone, right? They want to hang up on you. They don't know us, trust us, or like us, right? It's a cold call. So our perspective, simple sellings, is anticipate these objections. Don't take them as a real objection. Just treat it as a normal part of the conversation, and just have a rebuttal that you've practiced and that can come off with muscle memory, with practice, come off natural, and not like you're fighting the prospect or making them feel guilty or wrong, but that you're acknowledging it, showing some empathy, and that you just follow up with the next question. And that's the main thing to objection handling, in my experience. I don't know, Raul, if you have any thoughts on any parts here or from your experience in the sales team over there, but
Yeah, I
um,
think good objection handling always goes back to what you mentioned a little while earlier, right? Like just shut up and listen. It's a good point in the conversation to actually hear what they're saying and then ask another thought-provoking question basis the response that you just received, right? Now, the response can be varied, but it allows you the opportunity to continue the conversation and steer the conversation in the direction that you want, right? So even if they have a solution in place or an IT provider in place, like you said, right? It could be on how is that working for you, or it could be around a new security protocol that's come into place. Have they already implemented that for you? Or any of those multitude questions, right? It gives you the opportunity to go one layer deeper and continue the conversation.
mm, yeah, especially on that one layer deeper, like many times, someone may, a prospect may answer one of your questions, not necessarily an objection handling example, but they may say, we get a few leads each month, right? So, and this is in the context of simple selling, talking to an MSP around lead generation. The MSP may say, we get a few leads each month. And a simple technique is, guys, is just mirroring it back just to get them to just coming in with the mindset of curiosity to open up a bit more, a few leads each month, right? And inevitably they want to explain more because it implies that I still need a little bit more information. So it's just little techniques like that. It just needs to be practiced. It's not hard. It's just a matter of getting used to that. And then, selling the meeting, pitching it. This part should be easy. If you've done if you come in with confidence and you've had a good conversation with them, pitching the meeting is relatively easy. And asking a no-oriented question, I think, is a good one. So, would you be opposed to a conversation? Because many people are more, they don't want to say yes, right? So, would you be opposed to? They want to say no. So it's kind of worded in that way to make it a bit easier for them for the prospect to agree to the meeting. And really, it's selling time, right? You're selling the meeting, you're selling the conversation, what they can learn from that next step, the next meeting, not your product, right? Not managed services, right? It's like that first slide I showed, the cold call. I think they said it was 4 minutes and 50 seconds. Like, our cold calls are very similar in length. It's not, we're not selling a managed services agreement on the cold call. So selling the meeting is the main job in this context here. Farming techniques. When does your contract renew? How many computer users do you have? Or in my context, it's sales reps, but may I add you to our newsletter where we publish MSP specific lead gen tips, right? Always have these questions. Always have your MSP version of this question. When does your contract renew, so that we can time our follow-up better and compete for your business? Want to make sure I'm calling at the right time. All right. How many computer users do you have? Just, you're trying to get an idea. May we add you to our newsletter? We sometimes host webinars and events, and I thought maybe you'd be interested, right? Have that always be at the end of the call when there's a rejection to the appointment, because we have get so many appointments because of good farming that was done, right? Because when you do that follow-up, people feel, oh, they remember that previous conversation. Or sending those newsletters, like, that's when something happens in that big lag of time and months go by, and there's a situation, and then they've been receiving your emails, and guess who they reach out to first? The company that is in their inbox most recently, right? So they're getting those newsletters from you every month. You're still there. So a big factor too is try to compensate your BDR even a small amount for getting this information, because if not, you can still succeed, but we've found that most BDRs may just skip this stuff if they don't see the long-term value of farming. Why bother asking these questions? So If you want to incentivize best practice, think of a way to add some kind of a bonus or something along those lines for BDRs who do this. And this needs to be tracked in the CRM. It's got to be there. I guess that's it. Wow, yeah, there's more to share, but that's all we have time for. So I hope this was helpful, and I appreciated the time.
Yep. Thanks, Derek. I think a couple of people have asked where can they hire a good cold caller or PDR? Maybe you want to take that one.
Where?
Yes.
There are BDRs everywhere. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not really sure what. That's an interesting worded question. Like, where can I find a good MSP? Everywhere.
Are there potentially, do you want to, in your experience, is there a way to figure out if somebody is cut out for that particular job? Maybe that'll help.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like what we look for. Boy, I've made a lot of mistakes in the hiring process, especially early on. And look, it's never perfect, right? But the way we mitigate, making these types of hiring mistakes, we really prefer people require them now. They have to have had outbound calling experience previously, right? We don't want them to get into the call rejection experience and experiment on how their mindset is affected with us. We'd rather them have already gone through that at least a year in another job. That would be, and if they lasted a year, at least they were probably average or above average. So that would be my one tip for hiring a BDR.
Got it.
They don't need to necessarily have been doing outbound calling for MSP before or IT services or something, but at least cold calling.
Got it. Got it.
I mean, that would be my one thing.
And if somebody wants to learn more about what we've spoken of today, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, so you can reach us at simpleselling.co.co. That's our website. And definitely reach out to me. I should have had my email somewhere, but it's Derek@simpleselling.co. Or on our website, we have a lead generation guide. It's very long. That could hopefully be helpful. And yeah, if you're thinking about cold calling for your MSP, definitely reach out to me. But we have a lot of stuff on our blog too, and I might be doing some more webinars on some other parts of the framework. So definitely connect.
And again, going back to that BDR hiring question, I think the follow-up to that is like, where do you find them in terms of, are LinkedIn Indeed the best places, or are there any specified other websites slash solutions where they're more readily available?
Yeah, I haven't. That's a good question. I've tried the different job hiring websites like the Indeed and LinkedIn, and I haven't found that there's any one that is like better or worse. In my case, I'm connected to a lot of people that work within the BD, the outbound, space. And so I have a unique, I guess, connection to that world already. But like from the websites, I couldn't really say that there's one that's better than the other. I'm sorry, I'm not as helpful in that. But I tried. So I'm not saying that without, just based on my opinion. Like I've tried putting out jobs in various different job sites, and they all work, but there's not one that's necessarily way better than another one. So feel free to just
Got it.
give
Got it.
it a
I
go.
think just my 2 cents on that is, I think where you find a potential applicant is mostly relevant. I think you've got to really streamline or have your hiring process and non-negotiables figured out, because you don't want to be learning about what their skill sets are or aren't after you've made that decision.
Absolutely.
Again, I think they want to have more examples around what the poke the bear questions are. So if from your experience when you're selling into MSPs, Can you share some examples of what are those questions that you ask?
When I'm selling into MSPs?
Yes. From your own,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I don't give too many of those away because I've worked really hard to get those. Yeah, it's taken me. Yeah, I'll have to charge you a lot of money if you want to know what poke the bear questions to use.
Gotcha. Fair enough. I don't see more questions coming in. So thank you again, Derek, for doing this. And I've put out the simpleselling.co link on the chat here as well, where people, if they want to know more about what you do and how you do it, right? As well as do check out Zomentum. We'd be hosting the recorded copy of this webinar on our website as well for you to go through this later. And maybe absorb some of the goodness at your own pace, right? But again, thank you everybody for joining in.